Welcome to the third in a three-part series on diversity, equity, and access. And my name is Lisa Nakamura. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor in the Department of American Cultures and Screen Arts and Cultures. And I am really happy to be welcoming Ann Balsamo and Veronica Paredes to wind up what's been a really interesting and fun conversation about how to make online courses inclusive. I think there's been a lot of conversation about how to make online courses profitable or how to make them widespread, but not that much on other issues around bringing people into the course who otherwise might not have that much access to courses. So I'm going to introduce Ann and Veronica, and I will also be monitoring the Twitter channel if you're following live, which is at #CCCourses. So our first meeting was about how to create online collectives of learners working on similar topics. And so we had Ann, who is a dean of the School of Media Studies and a professor of media studies at the New School, and a co-founder of FemTechNet at femtechnet.org, a really successful and interesting experiment in linking together people working on similar topics across distance and across different kinds of institutions. And we've also had Liz Losh, director of the Culture, Technology, and Art program at Sixth College at UC San Diego, speaking with us during our second meeting about how to design courses to be inclusive and to bring women, people of color, and other people who often feel excluded from technology or economically or culturally are excluded, and how to make our courses safe and ethical for all kinds of people. So today, Ann is joined by Veronica Paredes, who is a PhD candidate in Media Arts and Practice, iMAP, at the University of Southern California, and is also a lecturer at the School of Media Studies at the New School for Public Engagement. So today we're going to be talking about Wikipedia editing, and I will just hand it over. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. That was beautiful, and we're really happy to be here. As Lisa said, I'm Ann Balsamo, and I'm here today with Veronica Paredes, and we're going to talk about writing with Wikipedia and creating a robust cultural archive. So we have a set of slides, so I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen with the slides. Let's see here.
And Dan, I can also share the slides while you're going over those slides, and maybe we can switch off. Do you want to try that?
Let's try that. Yeah.
Let me try to share my screen.
And I just remembered to put on my lower thirds. Okay, excellent, excellent. That's perfect. Thank you, Veronica. So let's go to the first slide, which is the question about why to teach with Wikipedia. Well, of course, I could just state the obvious, which is that many people already teach Wikipedia-based kind of activities and so on. And they do so because Wikipedia is our ubiquitous cultural archive. It is the, oftentimes, as you know, in any Google search, it's often the first thing that gets reported back in search results and so on. But what we understand about Wikipedia is, in addition to teaching people, how to kind of make sense of Wikipedia, to adjudicate and understand the veracity of Wikipedia entries and so on, we know that Wikipedia is an unevenly produced cultural archive. Its memory is not perfect, and its process of development itself has been historically and culturally contested and specific. Historically, we know more now about the development of Wikipedia and how over time it has attracted a higher number of male participants in terms of editors who write and started the effort, writing predominantly on topics that had to do with male kind of interests. So, Wikipedia grows out of an early effort, an earlier encyclopedia effort by Jimmy Wales called Newpedia, where the earliest Newpedia entries were devoted to male topics having to do with sports and cars and military history and weaponry and video games. Out of Newpedia comes the development of Wikipedia, which by Jimmy Wales kind of design aspired to be the online encyclopedia of everything available in every language in the world. So even though Wikipedia has these grand aspirations, we still know that it skews towards male participation in terms of editing, writing, and often male topics. In 2013, there was a controversy called the Wikipedia Category Wars, and this was one of the kind of inaugural kind of efforts that really kind of, I guess, asked women to start paying attention to what was getting entered into Wikipedia and what the kind of culture of Wikipedia editing entailed. The category wars centered on one editor's decision to remove all female writers from the category, the Wikipedia entry on American writers, and to create a secondary category called American women writers, and such that the unmarked gendered category on American writers only included male writers, and women had their own category of American women writers. This led to a frenzy of kind of media coverage that identified this as the woman problem, Wikipedia's woman problem. And this was one of the antecedent conditions for the development of a project that we called Wikistorming, that was run by FemTechNet during the Distributed Open Collaborative course on Feminism and Technology that ran from September to December in 2013. So we got a lot of press coverage from this learning activity. It's a key learning project of FemTechNet. Most of the press was very positive. So this is one from Jezebel called "The Lady Geeks Are Coming from Wikipedia." What's the next one? The next one was, "Can these students fix Wikipedia's lady problem?" That was an article that showed up in Mother Jones. And then there was an article covering what we were calling Storming Wikipedia, our effort to gather people's attention who were participating in the FemTechNet doc to put emphasis on editing and revising Wikipedia so that it was more accurate in addressing the omission and the treatment of women and feminist contributions to the histories of science and technology. There was a piece of kind of spectacular negative press about our Wikistorming activities, and this came from Fox News. I'll let Veronica get the slide, where Fox coverage of the Wikistorming efforts was cast as a kind of negative example of feminists injecting bias into Wikipedia. And the real issue that Fox News had with the Wikistorming effort was that college institutions and esteemed institutions such as Yale and other Ivy League universities were giving course credit for students to inject feminist bias into Wikipedia. So the positive press was balanced out by a negative account by Fox News about the the way in which feminists were taking over Wikipedia and injecting bias into what they believed to be a kind of neutral and factual-based cultural archive. Well, we know that Wikipedia is particularly uneven in its treatment of topics having to do with women's science and technology and feminist contributions in science and technology. So we developed a certain set of learning objectives to guide our efforts to encourage our students who are in the nodal courses in the doc to take on kind of wiki editing as a kind of key learning practice that was uniting the kind of the nodes across the doc. And among the learning objectives that we were interested in, that one is that, and this is very common for people who do use Wikipedia in the classroom, that in writing for Wikipedia, students learn to write for diverse global audiences. They learn basic skills of reading and writing, how to read critically and how to write for informed and educated audiences. Next slide. They develop research skills. They are required, and we'll talk a little bit later on, in creating content for Wikipedia. They are required to do deep kind of research in primary sources to demonstrate things such as notability and the kind of the veracity of their claims. Next slide. Writing for Wikipedia, students also gain skills in collaborative writing, in that they are able to kind of not only write collectively, but they are able to understand how people who are reading their work can contest, revise, and edit their work in a collaborative authoring environment, which is what the back end of Wikipedia kind of is. Next slide. In the process of writing for Wikipedia, students become members of a knowledge community, a collective knowledge community. And in that, and this is the next slide, they learn how knowledge is produced, consumed in collection or in collaboration with other thinkers. And our argument is that in understanding more about how knowledge is produced and consumed, that they become critical thinkers and deeply engaged critical thinkers. Next slide. I've been talking about the usefulness of teaching with Wikipedia and teaching students how to edit Wikipedia in the context of understanding this concept of procedural literacies. And so I want to just take a little bit of time to explain what I mean by that. The term procedural literacy has been propagated by digital humanists to talk about the foundational literacy of computer programming and computer coding. Humanists such as Ian Bogost, although he may not call himself a digital humanist, humanists have identified a certain set of foundational literacies that provide the basic understandings about how code enacts applications, how code is compiled to do things in the world. And this underlying literacy is what they refer to as procedural literacy. This is the literacies about how things are created and how one uses specialized languages, such as computer programming languages and so on, to create other things and to create other experiences. So I believe that teaching students how to edit Wikipedia pages, and we'll get into what that means and the various levels of what that means, is actually contributing to the development of procedural literacies, because we are teaching students the procedures whereby public discourse is produced. We are teaching students the processes whereby knowledge claims are created and disseminated and sometimes contested. So to me, this is a contribution to the development of procedural literacies that instead of using specialized computer languages, that we are using the natural language capacities of editing in Wikipedia that combine kind of natural language use with the kind of minimally digital kind of markup language of HTML and so on. Next slide. I think in addition to the kind of basic learning objectives that all Wikipedia kind of editing activities contribute to, we also in FemTechNet kind of argue that another learning objective is that in learning how to write for Wikipedia, especially focusing on topics having to do with women in science and technology, that students were learning how to contribute to a more equitable and inviting knowledge space, that they were making an intervention into Wikipedia to make it more equitable and responsible in its representation of the contributions and activities of women to the histories of science and technology. Next slide. And I think our highest aspiration in terms of a learning objective is that through engaging in Wikipedia editing practices, that students will learn how to participate in principled intellectual discussions in the public sphere. Next slide. And I'm going to slide, why don't you talk about this, Veronica, and then I'll slide into sharing my screen.
Yes, I'm unmuted now. Okay, here I am. Yes, so Anne will be sharing her screen shortly, but the projects we wanted to mention is feminist Wikipedia efforts that influenced the environment by which Wikistorming came to be and were happening at about the same time or before in the year adding up, leading to fall 2013, were too few. The Feminist Engage Wikipedia, Moya Bailey was on Al Jazeera stream having an interview about the efforts that were going on with that Wikipedia project. There is the Global Women Wikipedia Write-In, led by Adeline Coe, and Lisa just had Adeline speak in her class, so might have something to say about that as well. But this just happened this month, so I think it's the third iteration of Global Women Write-In. Am I right, Lisa? Nod or third? Yes. So that's another thing that's been happening, and a bunch of an effort by many feminists to come and do the same kind of thing that Wikistorming was doing. So we don't see these in competition. Obviously, we're all kind of collaborating at the same time, and we'll talk more about the parallel collaboration and how that was part of the point of designing Wikistorming and the way of putting it in the classroom. The third I wanted to mention was Art and Feminism Wikipedia campaign, which is spearheaded by a group of people coming from art history contexts and also from Wikipedia, Dorothy Howard being one of them. That's a New York kind of event that's having a lot of central kind of organizing activity here, and that's been in collaboration with also GLAM. Sarah Streerick is also somebody who's really important to our Wikipedia community, as well as Jacqueline Ornemont and obviously Adrian Wadowitz, who we'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation. And the other wiki projects that are happening, one of which that's been very influential for the Wikistorming effort has been Wiki Project Feminism. So all these kinds of wiki projects that are going on Wikipedia that might not be legible to newcomers, but is something that Wikistorming was about embedding our students and our faculty and thinking about this community and not actually storming Wikipedia, but using that for a very particular reason that Anne can talk about later, but to really be respectful of the community and see the efforts that are already happening there and kind of see our own kinds of activities in collaboration with that. So we can move on to the next slide, which we can maybe talk a little bit about. We're going to talk a little bit about assignment examples. So Anne, if you could move on to the next slide. Am I still sharing? Is that what's happening here? Maybe I am. So the next slide is about assignment examples, and we wanted to I can share my screen to show that. Can you, okay, so I'm just hoping that you're seeing the right thing. So one of the things we want to mention about curriculum and about thinking about designing assignments for Wikipedia is to think a bit more expanded, in a bit more expanded fashion about what it means to assign things on Wikipedia and to give students assignments and responsibilities in this community. One of the foundational things to know about Wikipedia are its 5 pillars. So I think this is something that one needs to cover in any kind of module that's going to be involving Wikipedia editing or Wikipedia observation or ethnography or any sort of thing, which are the fundamental principles which are debatable and do have fault lines within the community itself and are not necessarily received or used by every member of the community in the same way, but to know that these are touchstones and these are things that define the arguments and are really important for having awareness of. So Wikipedia is an encyclopedia. It uses tertiary resources, and there's a lot of things that come along with that, how Wikipedia knows itself as an encyclopedia. Wikipedia is written from a neutral point of view, and so we can talk, there's so many discussions that can happen in class about unpacking these pillars. What is a neutral point of view? How do you define a neutral point of view? How does Wikipedia define a neutral point of view? And how has that led to arguments within the community and potential, vulnerabilities for attacking what Wikipedia represents itself to be? Wikipedia is free content that anyone can edit, use, modify, or distribute. This is really important when we start thinking about images and Wikimedia Commons, and that's an assignment example that we'll present later. Editors should treat each other with respect and civility. So again, these are words that we might want to unpack and think about how those are rhetorically used by Wikipedians and in their own kinds of consensus building or in arguments that might happen about particularly controversial pages or so-called edit wars. And if it's actually doing this, how is Wikipedia designing efforts to be more open and welcoming to newcomers? And I think a fair question is it succeeding? How is it not succeeding? And those kinds of questions can be opened up in discussion as we start to edit Wikipedia in the classroom. Wikipedia does not have firm rules. Now this is a pretty important one, and it leads to that encapsulates other parts of it. Be bold but not reckless. So these are sort of the known, unknown kinds of ways of being on Wikipedia that students should be aware of. You can discuss the topic of notability and all these other kinds of uses of language that go on Wikipedia, and think about how they're visualized. So Wikipedia has a lot of visualizations. It's a very large cultural archive, as Anne was talking about. It's the largest that our students will probably know, and that, as we know, that it's a pretty sizable and big encyclopedia in the genre. And so there are lots of visualization projects that try to show this data in a way that we're unfamiliar with seeing it. So one such example is Notabilia, which visualizes deletion discussions on Wikipedia pages. So this helps, exploring a project like this would help students to understand notability by seeing the actual arguments visualized for how articles are kept or deleted and the kinds of arguments that lead up to those decisions. It's not sudden, it's sometimes protracted, sometimes controversial, and involves a lot of different members of the community discussing these topics with the kind of larger tenets of notability in mind. So how to begin? And I think that, and this is where we wanted to start you in on the presentation again, and so I'm going to mute myself and you can maybe start talking. Anne, I think you're still muted.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. One of the things that we did when we, the way we started the Wikistorming activity in our class, was we began by doing an experienced kind of expert reading of the structure of a wiki page. And I have long believed that one of the things that students need to be taught is explicitly how to read digital material that comes to them in kind of dynamic kind of form over the web and so on, that they need almost a kind of performative expert kind of decoding of how to make sense of the way in which content is presented. So, for example, if you look at a Wikipedia page, obviously you know this, that that the first thing that students always need to be taught is to look at the revision history to understand, again, part of the process whereby a page has come into existence and whether or not that page that they're reading now is part of an ongoing lively contestation and discussion about the kind of the things that are promoted as facts and kind of data, or if it's a kind of a relatively uncontested page. So, teaching students not only how to read the first level page of a Wikipedia entry, but to understand and how to go through the page's history of how it's been constructed, how it's been revised, how it's been edited, and again, whether there's contestation or not. A structured kind of expert reading also points out that different kinds of Wikipedia pages have different kinds of information on them. So the info box, which is the often a sidebar kind of summary aspect of the information presented, the table of contents and so on, there are very strong conventions for how one authors the information to show up on a Wikipedia page, that unlike what students may think, which is that it's a simple kind of cutting and pasting from an authoring application like Microsoft Word or something, that in fact you have to structure the information for a Wikipedia page in certain ways that that kind of adhere to the conventions of information presentation. So I believe that one way to start a writing for Wikipedia activity is by performing an expert reading of several different pages so that students learn that this is as much a constructed account, a highly conventionalized, constructed account of a topic, that it isn't simply a kind of factual kind of data dump of information about a particular topic. Then what I do and what we did in our in our class was, after you do a kind of expert reading of how Wikipedia pages are structured, I then kind of embarked on what I understand to be a kind of close reading of specific Wikipedia pages. And here's just some examples of the kind of close reading that I might do. So I looked at the Gilbreths, who are a husband and wife team of industrial engineers and psychologists. Lillian Gilbreth is the wife, and Frank Gilbreth is the husband. They were efficiency experts who contributed to motion studies and the development of kind of human factors in industrial engineering. And here is a husband and wife team who, while they were doing their work, and this is in the early part of the 20th century, so the 1900s, while they were doing their work, they did all their work together, and they published their work kind of together. They were very famous for having many, many children, and the film Cheaper by the Dozen is based on their life story. But if you look at the Wikipedia entry for Lillian Gilbreth, you get a very nice and actually very long biographical kind of account of her contribution to psychology and industrial engineering. We get an entry about her work and how she contributed to the field of scientific management. But we also get a long section for her on marriage and the family that gives us her background on when she met her husband, the names and dates of the 12 children that they had, and so on. And if you go to Frank Gilbreth's webpage, Wikipedia page, we get, again, his early career, his motion studies, his legacy. We don't have anything about his marriage and his kind of list of children, although it does mention that he does have a long-standing collaboration with his wife. But the very long section that talks about his marriage to Lillian and the information about the children does not show up. So that's an example of, again, performing a close reading that shows how people who, by their own admission, were absolutely a kind of egalitarian team of researchers, both holding PhDs, both being recognized as engineers in industrial kind of engineering, scientific management, and so on, how Wikipedia treats their biographies differently in terms of what is included in each person's Wikipedia page. Look also at the comparison between Ada Lovelace's page and Alan Turing's page. And here's a more subtle difference, where Ada Lovelace is, recognized as a mathematician and known chiefly for her work on Charles Babbage's early general-purpose computer. She is recognized as kind of creating the first algorithm to be carried out by a machine. She's often described as the world's first computer programmer. And if you look throughout her her Wikipedia entry, you'll see that she's consistently referred to as Ada by her first name. And this is interesting in contrast to Alan Turing, another kind of renowned computer kind of scientist, who is often and only referred to as by his last name Turing, and never by his first name. He's never shorthanded by his first name, Alan. There are other kind of close readings that you can do in terms of comparisons of male and female kind of Wikipedia kind of entries that just show that there are different citation practices and different ways of kind of identifying and referring to the notable kind of person depending on their gender. So The second thing that we do with students, kind of based on this kind of comparative close reading, is to ask them to reflect on the kind of the politics of citation practices and the politics of using first names versus last names, the politics of using honorifics versus, again, first names or kind of names without honorifics. The third thing that we have done, that we did in our Wikistorming, was to start looking at and reading Wikipedia for the women who were missing or the feminist contributions were missing. And in this case, this takes a little bit of a more advanced approach to understanding kind of the history of the engagement between feminism, women, and the histories of science and technology. Because in order to find and identify omissions, you need to know, of course, who should have been included in the, in Wikipedia or in the account on a kind of particular historical event and so on. And as many feminist scholars can attest, finding lost women and finding lost feminist histories is really difficult. But what we did was borrow heavily on Autumn Stanley's book, which is called Mothers and Daughters of Invention, Notes for a Revised History of Technology, in which she has 1,000+ names of women who have made contributions to the histories of technology in 5 different areas. And in this case, we started just by opening the book, taking a name that is listed in Stanley's book, and finding and seeing if those names were represented anywhere in Wikipedia, either a Wikipedia page devoted to the woman or the feminist as a notable kind of contributor to the histories of science and technology, or if that woman's contribution was noted in the history of the relevant science or the relevant technology. So for example, there's a beautiful piece, let's see if I have, by if you type in the name of Fanny Hesse, what you see is that Fanny Hesse is instrumental in the development of agar, which is the material that we put in petri dishes to cultivate cell and by kind of development. And her husband, Walter Hesse, is widely credited with the invention of agar, but in the Wikipedia page it actually kind of in a throwaway way mentions that it was probably Fanny Hesse who gave Walter Hesse the idea to use agar, because agar is something that was used in canning vegetables, and she would have been familiar with that substance. So here is an opportunity for students to understand how, again, in the history of the development of agar, Walter Hesse has his own page, is linked to his own page, and Fanny Hesse does not have a page because she's just not considered to be as notable as her husband. So identifying citation practices, understanding where women should be and they aren't, means that there's that Wikistorming and the practice of writing, writing Wikipedia is an activity that really scales across kind of levels of student skills, so that students can begin simply by revising an existing page, cleaning up and adding citations, adding links where there aren't links, developing pages for people who are not represented or underrepresented, and so on. And what we believe is that this this activity, kind of at even the most the most foundational level of cleaning up citations, of talking about inclusions, why people get included in Wikipedia, why people have pages, why people don't have pages. We believe that this gives students the foundation for talking about concepts of things like open publishing, what counts as knowledge when it is created by different gendered agents, about the value of peer review and how widespread or not is the process of peer review, what is an appropriate domain of peer criticism, and what kinds of what kinds of knowledge creation practices kind of are propagated through this this archive that we call Wikipedia. So Veronica, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So I will unmute my mic and then go back into the PowerPoint. Oh, look at that. Okay. Can you... Oh. I went into the PowerPoint, but I'm not sharing it with you. So give me one moment. Apologies. Okay. So here we are. Okay. Right. So Anne kind of stopped here, the concepts of open publishing, peer review, and network knowledge creation. Now these are good concepts to talk about more generally and how they function and are make their way through contestation in the actual community of Wikipedia. So there are those kinds of ways that it is developed through as concepts and as processes, and there are ways that this has been shaped and particularly made official, the process of article creation and submission. Now what we found in our what we found in our use of Wikipedia and Wikistorming in the fall of 2013 was that there are definitely official and unofficial rules of how to do this, how to go about doing article creation and article submission. And we wouldn't have been able to navigate these kinds of different terrains of Wikipedia without Wikipedians on our side, without Wikipedians working with us. And one of the key figures in this, one of the key people, was Adrian Wadowitz, who was the FemTechNet Wikipedia ambassador. Now, there are many materials on femtechnet.org and on our Vimeo page, the user FemTechNet, vimeo.com/femtechnet. There was a lecture that Adrian Wadowitz did at Pitzer College as part of a Wikipedia edit-a-thon that they had there that they were able to film and put up and share with everyone. That's the Editing on Wikipedia Vimeo video, which is, you can see here on this slide, which was really important of showing our instructors in the larger FemTechNet universe how to teach Wikipedia, and also particularly in our classroom at the new school. And there was also a video dialogue between Adrian Wadowitz and Jackie Vernemont about Wikistorming that also happened at Pitzer College. And one thing that I learned in an open office hour as part of FemTechNet this year was that I'd gone completely the wrong way with the trying to go through the official article creation and submission process. I had my students submit their articles for creation to the Wikipedia review process, and there's a very scary message you get when you do that. There's a very long queue. You might not hear from us for months. Luckily, it was a faster turnaround than that, but a lot of those students got rejected, and this is kind of a discouraging thing. A student has put in a lot of work throughout the semester to do this, and obviously we stressed that this is not the most important thing. Adding a Wikipedia page is not the most important part of learning Wikipedia in the classroom. There are a lot of other processes that we want to emphasize, and so that doesn't feel like such a devastating failure for the students. But what I learned in the open office hour with Jackie Vernemont, who's on the left here, sitting next to Adrian Wadowitz, is that that's just not the way to do it. You have to be bold. You have to listen to the last pillar of the 5 pillars, which is that Wikipedia does not have firm rules. So even if there is this process that has been made official and kind of sanctioned by the Wikipedia official community, you just have to post it. And that's what was one of the most successful parts was one of our students just did it and just added their Wikipedia page, and we'll talk about that page. That was the heresies page that was added in that semester. But you have to know the official and unofficial parts of the community, and we need Wikipedian ambassadors to do that. So FemTechNet has some of those that we are more than happy to share with the larger community, our knowledge through the FemTechNet resources, but also using the Wikipedia education program, which can allow for you to have an online ambassador assigned to your class that is helping your students to navigate through the Wikipedia community and universe and those rules and regulations and figuring out what would be the official and unofficial way and what's going to be most beneficial to getting their pages accepted, their edits to stick, and those kinds of other parts that might not necessarily be what is officially recommended in the Wikipedia literature. The other thing another way to contribute to Wikipedia or to think about framing contributing to Wikipedia for your students is thinking about Wikimedia Commons. So here at the New School we have a lot of design students, we have some art students, and one way to contribute to Wikipedia, other than all the ways we've been kind of listing, is also to take pictures. So Wikimedia Commons has their picture of the day, their photo challenges. There was a campaign with Wikipedia recently focused specifically on historical monuments. So they were looking for images of historical monuments, so that might be a really useful assignment for a space and place class in whatever kind of discipline. So, to expand the way we think about contributing to Wikipedia, I think is really important to allow for more people to contribute and see how they can see themselves in adding to the creation of this huge archive. And the last thing we list here is create a new page. And that might be something that a lot of students will come in thinking they're going to be doing first off if we're going to be working with Wikipedia in the classroom. And we put it here last because it's one of the last kind of things that you might do. You might submit it to be a good article. You might try to go through the peer review process to make a page go from a stub to a featured article within the criteria of Wikipedia. But this is not the most important thing in assigning modules and making assignments and designing assignments for Wikipedia. We want to emphasize that. So some of our examples, I mentioned earlier the heresies Wikipedia page. This is still up. This is a contribution made by a student of ours in the New School class from fall 2013. It's part of Heresies, a feminist publication in art and politics. This didn't exist before. And so a lot of work went into this page by that student to just post this and write it and find the image. Heresies has this wonderful PDF archive, scans of all of the journals that majority of the journals that were published, and so the student was able to go into that archive and find a screenshot that they could add to an info box. So there was a lot of learning and work that went into this page. Another one, this is more of a stub page. This is a feminist dictionary. And you'll notice, there's little warnings at top. The article has multiple issues. So this is something that another in FemTechNet might carry on, making this stub a little more rounded out and adding more information to make this a more robust page. These are other edits that were made that semester. The first one, Marie-Anne Victoria Bouvin, was directly a contribution that a student made after looking at the Autumn Stanley book that Anne mentioned earlier. And so the other ones were different interests that students had. As for Shub was an editor, a Russian female woman editor, and that student was a film studies student or leaned that way and was interested in that field, and so added this page and was very proud of it. And both of these students had to learn a lot about image restrictions on Wikimedia Commons and had to have multiple images taken down and figure out how to get an image that was in the with the correct rights and restrictions, that they can be added to Wikipedia. So there was a lot of learning that went there too. Brenda Laurel, revisions were made to her page, but were also made by other students in FemTechNet. So that student was able to learn about, go through the revision history page, the revision history of the Brenda Laurel page, and see what other revisions and additions were made by other FemTechNet students in California while being here in New York. So that's a little bit of what we had happen for our class, and I wanted to let Anne finish off. I think we're close to wrapping up here, and just wanted to kind of have a final word about the contributions that we made during that semester. So I'll let Anne talk to me.
Excellent. And Veronica, can you put the last slide up then? So we just wanted to kind of summarize by, advocating for the use of whether you call it wiki storming or wiki writing, writing for Wikipedia, to advocate for that in the in the classroom. It is in its most kind of bald way, what I understand the process of Wikipedia writing to involve is it really involves the kind of fandom of people. That, in fact, what we were trying to do is fan the fandom of feminism. Because as I study Wikipedia and understand more about the dynamics, we know it's an uncompensated kind of labor effort, very laborious, done oftentimes on leisure time. Certainly people aren't getting paid to add pages on feminism or women's contributions more broadly. That in fact Wikipedia is being written by the fans of topics, by people who have passionate investments in these topics or professional investments in these topics. So in part we developed the wiki storming effort to inspire fans of feminism. We also understand that there are many ways to collaborate, and this was an example of a temporal collaboration more than it was an example of actual collaborative writing to the person. That many of the students in our class wrote individual pages, did revisions on individual pages. They didn't work with one another, but taken together, the hundreds of edits that were made to Wikipedia between September and December of 2013 demonstrated a different kind of collaboration, a kind of temporality, a collaboration across time and in time, in the same time, where students were collaborating across the nodal courses, not necessarily with one another, but collaborating on the project of making Wikipedia a better place and a better archive than it was when we started. So we also understand that the concerted effort of organizing people to edit Wikipedia on a topic is an exercise in collaboration, and that it often it is the only way to think about kind of making an impact on Wikipedia that isn't isn't tied to kind of the individual contribution. And then finally, the last kind of summary point that we want to make, I think, with our experience, or reflecting on our experience in using Wikipedia as a key learning project, is the admonition to be bold, to have confidence that the knowledge that we have that is missing is important knowledge that should be in the cultural archive, and probably the ethical objective of the wiki storming activity was to encourage feminists of all stripes and of all ages and all levels to take responsibility for the futures of our own history. that these histories belong to all of us, and none of us in particular, but they are a history that we are the stewards of. And by encouraging and teaching our students to write to Wikipedia, to write in Wikipedia, to engage in the culture of Wikipedia editing, we are encouraging them to take responsibility for the future of the digital archive, so that that archive is more equitable and more representative of the important histories that are out there. So that's what we wanted to talk about.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne and Veronica. We started a little late, so I'm going to direct people who are watching to the Connected Courses website, where we have a link to Adrienne Wadowitz's video where she walks through how to edit Wikipedia in detail. This was not a good medium for that, because if you ever edited Wikipedia, you know the type is really small. It's kind of hard to do it live because it's really tiny and not great. And so there are resources that we shared on Connected Courses website, but also FemTechNet.org has a lot of stuff. So if you want to teach it to your students, you can assign them those videos and have them watch this one. There are many resources that we've gathered and that we've tested in our own classes with our own students. So we know they work, or mostly work. So thank you very much. This was great. I'm so thrilled we were able to have both of you to talk about this project. It's really a groundbreaking thing. So I think we're out.